Okay, welcome to the Nightpan Speaker Series, and we're very fortunate to have a special guest here tonight. We have Tela Troge. She is the attorney for the Shinnecock Indians, and we're going to be talking to her about all things Shinnecock tonight, but I want to learn more about Tela first. Tela, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What do you do for a living? Your experiences of being an Indigenous person on Long Island as well.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me and for hosting this speaker series. It's been fascinating to listen to the other speakers. So my name is Tela. I am an attorney, like you said, but I play a lot of different roles. So I'm the tribal attorney, but I also head our family assistance department, which has been instrumental during COVID to getting resources out to tribal members who live not only on territory on the Shinnecock reservation, but all across the world and even across the globe. And so my department helps people with all kinds of things, from emergency housing repairs to grocery assistance and so on and so forth. And I also am a Shinnecock kelp farmer. We're a group of women who are engaged in aquaculture. And I can speak more about that a little later, but we're basically trying to improve the water quality around Long Island. And my experiences as an Indigenous person on Long Island, it's definitely interesting to be from a place where my ancestors have been living and existing and sustaining themselves for almost 13,000 years now, since the glaciers melted and left us in this beautiful place full of abundance and enough resources to take care of not only our community, but also surrounding communities and all of the different communities and groups who have joined us today.
I want to get back to your being a lawyer. What inspired you to be a lawyer?
So being Shinnecock and being raised by Shinnecock is a matriarchal society and tribe, and so it's very much female led, and so I had a lot of very strong women activists in my life, and Shinnecock is no stranger to struggle. So my whole life we've always been in a fight for what's called federal recognition. We were in a court battle with the United States for 32 years over that. I'm 34, so you know, most of my life that's been my experience going through this process with the United States government to basically prove that we're a first contact Indian tribe. And so a lot of my upbringing was doing historical research, and then what really solidified my choice to go to law school were some classes that I took in undergrad. I went to SUNY Geneseo, and that's up in Seneca country. So I got exposed to a lot of good things that were happening up there, and a lot of professors who were really gracious and helped me along with my educational pursuit. And then I have an older cousin, Kelly Dennis, who recently got elected to the Shinnecock Tribal Council. And so she's my first cousin. Our mothers are sisters, and she's a couple of years older than me. We were basically raised together as sisters, but she went to law school in New Mexico and invited me to a summer program. It was basically like a boot camp for Indigenous and Alaskan Native students interested in going to law school. And so I got recruited from that program to a law school that specializes in Indigenous law. And the rest is history.
Very nice. If you had to identify some of the key concerns today of the Shinnecock Nation, what would they be?
So right now we're really focused on economic development. And the basis of economic development is to provide for our people. So we don't have a tax base like a lot of other governments have. We don't tax our citizens. And so really the best way to generate revenue to take care of people is through economic development. However, we've been in a constant struggle with not only the town of Southampton, but also the state of New York. Anytime we attempt to engage in any type of economic development, where usually a roadblock is thrown out in front of us, or a legal challenge is made, and we're tied up in the court system for decades. And it's really hard when you come from a community where all of your resources have been stolen to really be able to put up a legal fight. So
can you talk more about that? What are some of the pending litigations out there? What are some of the ones you've settled already?
Sure. So again, this is a really a struggle that goes way back. And so currently we're engaged in litigation over our Shinnecock Monument project, which is 2 digital outdoor advertising signs on either side of Sunrise Highway. So Shinnecock people, through our in-depth process, as I was talking about before, of going through this process of federal recognition, in order to prove that we're an Indian tribe, we were able to prove that all of us who are enrolled in Shinnecock are descended from this place. It's called Canoe Place or Nyamuck. Now it's called Westwoods. It's in Hampton Bays, right along the Peconic Bay. It's absolutely beautiful. And in 1959, New York State was focusing a lot on infrastructure and building highways. This was post-World War, and a lot of resources were being, put all over the country to build up the infrastructure. And so some wealthy people were looking for a way to bring folks from New York City out to the Hamptons. And so they decided to build Sunrise Highway. The only problem was that our original territory, Westwoods or Canoe Place, was in the way. So they basically illegally just went ahead anyway and built the highway. And so in 2019, we constructed 2 monument signs to act as resources to kind of capitalize on that. And the intent of the monument signs was to fund our preschool. So we have a beautiful preschool on territory where our kids are really immersed in their culture. They learn our Algonquin language. And it's also just a safe place for them to learn and go to preschool. And so we also wanted to be able to fund basically like a senior center or assisted living center for some of our older residents. But almost immediately, just maybe 2 days after we started construction, New York State filed a lawsuit against us in the New York State Supreme Court, arguing that we didn't have the right to construct these signs, and that the land was owned by New York State and not the tribe. And so that case just sat pending for an entire year until we got a judge, Judge Sanford Berlin, to make, it's not a final ruling, it's called a non-final disposition, but basically the state was asking for an injunction, a permanent injunction banning the operation of our signs. But the judge said, when you balance the equities and you look at the Shinnecock need to provide for its members, and the overwhelming amount of evidence that we submitted. So before we actually constructed the signs, I spent 2 years in the county clerk's records office, carefully documenting and tracing back our ownership of the land. So to the point where it's undisputable to anyone who really sits down and examines and looks at everything, that it is Shinnecock land. And so, while it did take an entire year to get this decision, there was a lot of information for the judge to look over, a lot that we had presented. And so he came to the conclusion that, he was not going to issue an injunction against our project. So just last February, we were actually able to build the second monument. So we had run into some financing problems. No bank wants to finance a project that is under litigation, just doesn't make good business sense. But after we got that non-final disposition, some funding opened up to us, and we were able to complete the project. And so now it is starting to generate revenue, nowhere near what we need to operate our preschool and our senior center. And, you know, we're spending hundreds of thousands on legal fees still. Now the case still persists in the New York State Supreme Court, as well as the New York Appellate Court. And so it's basically dual litigation. We just filed a motion to dismiss based on sovereign immunity. So we're still waiting for the appellate court to hear that. They're really backed up with COVID, and, you know, so the docket is backed up, but we're very confident that we will succeed as a matter of law.
Excellent. Are there other litigation issues out there? I know you were looking to purchase some land related to your ancestral burial grounds.
Yeah, so luckily there's no litigation involved in that. We try to, anytime that we purchase land, we try to avoid litigation and go through fair market value. And so recently we made an acquisition through a partnership with the Buconic Land Trust. They actually were able to set up a fund for us. It's called the Shinnecock Land Acquisition and Stewardship Fund through the Buconic Land Trust. And so we were able to purchase recently 4.6 acres of land, which was something like an astonishing $5.6 million. So again, when you have almost no resources, trying to buy back your own sacred burial ground for $5.6 million is just insane when you think about it, you know. But we were able to complete the acquisition. Roger Waters from Pink Floyd was a huge help in acquiring the assets, as well as the town of Southampton's Community Preservation Fund. And so really, for those who don't know, the Community Preservation Fund is funded on a 2% real estate transfer tax on all of the 5 East End towns of Long Island. So anytime there's any type of real estate transaction, whether it be a complete transfer of fee or an easement or anything like that, it's taxed 2%. All the money goes into a fund for each respective town. And so we actually saw something really interesting happen during COVID-19 pandemic, where we just had this mass exodus of people fleeing from New York City and buying up whatever real estate they could out in Southampton. The Community Preservation Fund basically exploded. And so there was more than enough money. It's the right thing to do. It's the purpose of the Community Preservation Fund. Southampton has identified the area that this burial ground is, Shinnecock Hills, is a priority area. The town supervisor even recently just said that it's his #1 priority to preserve as much land there as possible. So we were able to get the town to contribute a good amount of the purchase price. And so right now there's a mansion that was unfortunately built on top of a lot of the graves. So we're in the process of dismantling that mansion and restoring the condition of the property. And so once that mansion is down, the land will be fully returned back to Shinnecock as reparations from the Buconic Land Trust. And so that's really exciting. We're also working on acquiring 11 acres right next door adjacent to that parcel. So hopefully that will be complete relatively soon. But it's really exciting, and it's exciting to be part of the larger land back movement that's spreading across definitely the United States, but also in Canada as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. You mentioned earlier that you also are looking to sell and grow kelp. How did that come about? And where are you in the process there?
So the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers is a collective of 6 Indigenous women. We're all from Shinnecock. And we were approached by an organization called Green Wave. And their mission is to build a vast network of regenerative ocean farmers, basically across the globe, to grow this species of seaweed that's indigenous to this area. It's called sugar kelp. And sugar kelp has an amazing ability to basically suck up excess nitrogen from the water.
Oh, good.
And clean the water. It also can sequester carbon. And so here on Long Island, we face a water quality crisis, really, because there's especially out on the east end of Long Island, there's a lack of septic systems or sewer systems, like municipal sewers. So everyone has their own individual septic. A lot of the time they're far from state of the art, and they're just basically releasing so much nitrogen into the water that it's killing all of the marine life. And that, coupled with fertilizer that's being trucked in from like New Jersey, it crosses all kinds of bridges on trucks. It's bad news. That also runs off into the water, and it just creates a nitrogen overload that the water, it can't sustain anything. And so Shinnecock, we're surrounded on all sides by water, and we've always survived on the abundance of the sea. But now that way of life is kind of disappearing due to the overpopulation of the area. And so Shinnecock actually has like a really in-depth history with using seaweed as a natural resource. We use it for all kinds of things. Historically, we used it to as a mixture with fish to fertilize crops. We also used it to insulate our homes. It's also used as a medicine. And we have what's called reserved treaty rights to seaweed. So when you go back and you look at all the agreements that we made with the early colonists, we always reserved our rights to collect and gather seaweed. So while the 6 Shinnecock kelp farmers are looking at it as a business, we're also looking at it as a way to, engage in those treaty rights. So it's really exciting. Mm-hmm. We just opened our hatchery. So we completed a wild harvest of sugar kelp seedlings, and we transferred them into our tanks, and they're doing really well. So it's really exciting. They're in the hatchery growing on these spools, and each spool is 200 feet long. Wow. In about 5-6 more weeks, they'll be ready for us to transfer out into the water, where they will grow until April. And hopefully we're trying to build a network up. Our first grow season, we want to try to take up to 10 tons of nitrogen out of the water, out of the Shinnecock Bay, so that we can recreate a habitat where fish and shellfish want to return and can really flourish without all that excess nitrogen. And we just our goal is to just clean up Shinnecock Bay.
Sounds
but it's really exciting. The end product is going to be a fertilizer that will give people an organic option to use instead of these horrible chemicals that everyone's using right now.
Very promising. Yeah. I read too that the Shinnecock is getting involved in the cannabis industry. Can you provide us some details about that endeavor and what kind of outcomes the Shinnecock are hoping to achieve with cannabis sales?
Sure, so definitely. So our cannabis business is very exciting. I'm actually the vice president and secretary of our cannabis regulatory division, which basically regulates our tribal business, which is called Little Beach Harvest. And so we're in the process of building a wellness center, which will act as a distribution center for our tribal grow house that will be able to provide both medical and adult use products to those who are interested in consuming. The wellness center will include a cafe for people and just a place where you can engage in healthy, mindful, restorative, healing-centered practices. And so we really look at cannabis as being something that that can heal the body. And so we're really excited about cannabis. Again, we're interested in economic development, and we think that cannabis can be a really great future for our tribal members.
So what's the timeline look like? Would that be something that would happen near future?
Yeah, in the very near future. The construction is going on right now for the wellness center, and also the grow facility. So it's all going to be state of the art, everything. It's really exciting. We just completed financing with a company called Tilt Holdings, who invested $18 million into the cannabis business. So it's really exciting that we'll have their expertise in providing the top quality, top of the line products that, it's not going to be available to someone who doesn't have the type of experience that Tilt has in this industry. So it's very exciting.
And you have communities around you that are actually not supporting cannabis sales, even though it's legal, in the state.
Hampton Village just opted out.
So it might be very good for revenue.
Definitely.
Are there still plans to build a casino? I hear from time to time that you're considering it. Are there any updates you can give on that?
There are. We're really trying to work with the state on really meaningfully advancing just different gaming pursuits. We were engaged in a gaming effort in around 2003 at the same piece of land that I spoke about earlier, Westwoods, and the state really did everything they could to make sure that didn't happen. And so
why would they be against it?
Basically, that it's really about revenue, and I think that they don't want us to have any revenue. They like for Shinnecock people to be stuck in poverty, for us not to have any resources to repurchase our land. And, the inequality, I think it's always been there, but with COVID-19, I think that, it just really exposed how bad things are and how inequitable and how unjust New York State has really tried to rule over basically the sovereign tribes in the state with an iron fist. And really, when you look at federalism and the United States Constitution, that's not how the system is designed. Tribes are sovereign nations who are supposed to have a government to government relationship with the federal government that supersedes any type of state government. So it's very interesting being an attorney who specializes in sovereignty, because we are trying to, work these issues out at the highest level of government. But we do at the same time need the cooperation of the state, which to this point has been very, very hard, especially when it comes to gaming pursuits. But, that makes it even more exciting for our cannabis business, where we kind of have a better relationship with the local governments. And, the revenue for cannabis is it's a really good business. We are always still pursuing gaming, though.
I'm wondering, even with the infrastructure bill that just passed, might there be an effort with the federal government to expand the roads out there so that maybe traffic might be one of the issues that the state might have, but if there was an investment in both the roads, that would support possibly, a casino as well.
Definitely.
Just a thought there. Some of those watching this may be aware of what's called the land back movement. We talked a little bit about that. Can you provide us what the land back movement means to the Shinnecocks and how you can achieve it?
Sure. So I'm not sure if people are aware, but before colonization, the territory of the Shinnecock Nation went from what's now the town of Brookhaven all the way out to the town of East Hamptons. So we're talking about a lot of land that was stolen unjustly from the Shinnecock Nation. Currently, we have probably about 2,000 tribal members and about 800 who live on Shinnecock territory. We have around 1,000 acres of land left. Most of it's not suitable for habitation. It's in a swampland. Everything is really moldy. FEMA has projected by 2050 that up to 3/4 of our territory could be lost to hurricanes and superstorms and rising sea levels. So we're really in a crisis with the land that we've been pushed onto through these like fraudulent land deals. Again, at the hands of New York State and the town of Southampton, the same people who are blocking our economic development and attempt to advance and attempts to, be able to. And again, we're not trying to push anyone off their land. We would like to engage in fair market purchase of our territory back, but it's increasingly challenging when we have every roadblock thrown in front of us at every step of the way, and the rules of the game are constantly changed so that no matter what we do, it's always challenged. So it's very difficult, but land back is important because we need to sustain ourselves, and the housing conditions that almost every house has black mold. I spoke a little bit about being the director of our family assistance department. Almost every day I get an email from a family whose home is just infested with this horrible, horrible black mold. It causes respiratory problems. It's not healthy. It's not any way that anyone should be forced to live. So we are always looking at expanding our land base. Economic development is the number one way where we're going to be able to achieve that. But again, land back it's not about pushing anyone away. It's really about sharing the land and sharing resources in a way that's more equitable and doesn't value one group of people over another group of people, especially people who have ancestral ties to this land. This is where we are from. This is our homeland, and it's been our homeland for 13,000 years. Everybody else, are relative newcomers. And so we just think that there's a more fair and equitable way that we can all coexist here. So, but we do have a desperate need to get to higher ground, protect ourselves from climate change. And again, we need land for housing, we need land for economic development, we need land for farming, and basically, anything any other person would need land for. So another part of land back is reclaiming sacred spaces. So a lot of the land that was stolen from us really recently in 1859 was in complete violation of federal law. And most of it, it's about 4,000 acres, contains sacred burial sites. So really until recently, with the acquisition I was talking about earlier, Sugarloaf, we were barred from going to some of our most sacred burial places, which is just horrible if you think about it. They're burial areas that are proven to have been used for like at least 3,000 years by our people. And up until just like last year, if we went to those places, we were faced with harassment, threats, and possible arrest. And so land back is also about having access to these sacred spaces that has been denied to us through all kinds of legal mechanisms, violence, threats of violence, harassment, even enslavement throughout history. It's a really ugly history when you really look at it. And you don't have to go far. All you have to do is open up like the record books, and it's all right there. All the injustices were very carefully recorded against our people. And so it's really just about building a more equitable future where we all come together as a community and share resources rather than steal and enslave and kill off by genocide.
It's sad, but I hear some hope in your voice as well. So what are some ways that we can assist the Shinnecocks? Some specific ways?
So we have a toolkit. We have an Instagram. If you have Instagram, Warriors of the Sunrise, we have a link tree in there where we keep up to date with a lot of the actions you can take. But if you go to that Instagram, again, it's Warriors of the Sunrise. and go to the link tree. Right now, there's a toolkit where you can contact the governor as well as the attorney general for New York State and ask that they drop the frivolous lawsuit against the Shinnecock Nation's monument sign project. And so we make it really easy. The toolkit has graphics that you could share on social media. You can share it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have a link where you can easily email both the governor and the attorney general. We provide a script if you don't know what to say, but you're also more than welcome to share your thoughts and ideas. And then we ask that if you have an extra 5 minutes, just making a phone call to the governor and the attorney general, also the commissioner of the Department of Transportation. It goes a long way. And so that's one way you can take action. Another way is through donating to the Peconic Land Trust. If you go to the Peconic Land Trust website and search in Shinnecock, you'll see the Shinnecock Land Acquisition and Stewardship Fund. We are in the process of doing an 11-acre acquisition. I believe the purchase price on that one is $10.8 million, I think. And so we just started that fund. We have $67,000 towards 10.6 million. So we have a bit of fundraising to do, but those are two actions you could take. It is a 501c3. So
we did put a link to the Peconic Land Trust in the chat.
Thank you.
And my thoughts are towards Roger Waters here, possibly doing maybe a benefit concert with his buddies.
Right.
That would be a good way to raise some money. A little live aid for the Shinnecock. Joe Sackman, my steering committee member with Long Island Activist, has a question for you.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, Tela, for doing this. So sorry I don't have the video on. It's always me staring at my nose. So I know in the past, this is more like a political legislative question. In the past, there was like I guess a delegation of indigenous tribes in New York State that met in Albany. If I'm right about this, I might be totally off. Is there some desire for representation in the in Albany? Not by electing somebody in like an assembly or a Senate district, but by have like a delegate of some sort from like the Shinnecock or the Mohawk, etc. They're participating in legislation that's passed, not just having legislation passed and affecting, but being participants in the government in a way. Is that something that's desired, or just like, hey, we want to do here on our land, etc., and we'll go from there. So if you get my question.
Definitely. And so that's a great question. So there are a number of what's called recognized nations in New York. I believe there's 8 currently, at least state recognized. There are other tribal nations in the state of New York, and by no means does recognition or lack of recognition make you any less indigenous. It's really all just a matter of like government formalities. But really, if you look at the history of relationships with the tribal nations in the state of New York, things really disintegrated in the 80s and the 90s with cigarette taxation issues. And so formally, we did have like better representation. When I say we, I'm talking about all the tribal nations, and you can never, just kind of lump us together. But generally speaking, we did have a better relationship with Albany and with all the different agencies. And, we used to have really good liaisons with all the different government agencies. That just doesn't exist anymore. And a lot of it can be traced back to the disputes that we had with taxation of cigarettes. When you go back to both the federal constitution and the the state of New York's constitution, as well as all the treaties that have ever been made. It's really clear that Indian trade shouldn't be taxed. But again, New York State really just tries to come in with an iron fist. When you think about it, they're one of the original 13 colonies, and they just could never relinquish, their idea of control of Indigenous people. And so it's really at a bad point right now. But it's at a time where, the nations really need to work cooperatively with the state. And it's not for a lack of want to do that on the Indigenous nations part. It's really the state of New York that is completely refusing to not only give us a seat at the table, but even come to the table and meet with the Indigenous nations of New York. So it's something that has existed in the past. And doesn't exist right now. So I think it's more of a lack of desire, especially with the Cuomo administration. He had a really, really bad track record with tribal nations. So we're hopeful that with the new governor and whatever happens with elections, that we can really steer the state into a better direction on how Indigenous people are treated, and that respect of our sovereignty is also recognized by the state in a way that it just currently hasn't been for the whole entire past administration and even before that.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to mention that Long Island Activist is running a diaper drive right now for the Shinnecock Nation. And we've had a really good response. I wonder if Joe could actually add some insight into that, because the diapers are actually been shipped to his house. So what is your house looking like, Joe, nowadays?
Like I've got 100 kids.
Wow.
It's good. It's been a great response. And I look forward to providing a full report, once we have the drop off on Saturday. As many people know, Tela's on steering with us, and we wanted to help, and that's what was needed. So, I'm glad we could reach out to the communities abroad, Long Island. We reached out beyond Long Island, and we had a great response. So there are dozens of boxes, at home, and the drop off on Saturday would be great. And if anyone sees this between now and then, just they could check out Long Island Activists Facebook page, and they can find a link there. Really appreciative. It kind of gives me some hope that there are some good people out there and want to do some good things. And then they can take the next step and donate to the Baconic Land Trust.
Yes. So he and I are looking forward to meeting up with you this weekend and bringing you some of that. We also have an ActBlue link in which people can donate directly, just some cash donations. So last I checked, we're at $650, and that's been up for about a week now. We're going to keep that up a little longer than the Diaper Drive. So I want to wrap things up. I kind of want to leave things in your hands right now. Tela, are there things you want us to know that I didn't address in our questions? And maybe leave us with some thoughts about the future for the Shinnecock Nation.
Definitely. So I do want to say thank you so much to both you and Joe for helping with the diaper drive. We really value and cherish our children, and so we want to be able to provide for everyone. We have, again, really been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and so it's really been a struggle. We were already suffering from poverty before the pandemic, but things really got all that much worse during this period, and it's hard times for everyone. And I think that was one thing that really the community of the East End and all of Long Island really did come together and take care of each other during this pandemic. So that's been something beautiful to see. For the first time, it wasn't just people from Shinnecock, it was people who had never experienced a loss in income, and food insecurity and diaper insecurity, all kind of, we took a hard hit together. And so it's been beautiful to see communities come together and support each other. So I think that's been a bit of a silver lining of the pandemic, just all of the love and support that all communities have shown across Long Island to take care of each other. And you've definitely been a huge part of that. So again, thank you. We do have good things. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. We are, like we're talking about the infrastructure bill. We are really excited about that, especially where it comes to the digital divide. A lot of people probably don't know, but Indian reservations are some of the least served populations when it comes to internet. And so there's something called the NTIA grant recently, where Congress had originally appropriated $1 billion to the native tribes, the federally recognized tribes across the nation, to put in proposals for broadband to bring their population, native populations, up to internet speeds of hopefully 100 MPS, which would really kind of future-proof, especially the children who have to use now the internet for learning, also people who telework. Internet is just really important. With this new infrastructure bill, that appropriation got raised to $2 billion, which is really exciting. However, the need that was submitted for all the tribal nations across the nation was $5 billion, so it still falls short. But it's exciting that this administration is really committed to getting funding out to Indian country where it's really desperately needed. Shinnecock was really lucky to receive some money from the American Rescue Plan, which has really helped us address a lot of emergency housing needs. So when I get those calls from tribal members that, they have a black mold crisis, or something is happening in their homes, I am able to help them. It's not just that I'm like listening on the phone, unable to do anything. So that's been really good, that we're starting to see that federal support. If we had the type of support that we had federally from the state, I think that we could really, at least get people to a place where they're comfortable. They're not struggling to survive. They're not struggling disproportionately with respiratory illnesses. Again, the water cleanup is so important. We have a lot of bad history with our water being poisoned and people getting cancer from the chemicals that are in the water. So, and that's an issue for all of us on Long Island. We all share the water. And we're, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking in terms of like New York, you were saying like if the state could help more. There is the initiative out there to pass the New York Health Act. Is there any talk about the Shinnecock Nation being part of that?
Definitely. I mean, we're all for the New York Health Act. I think we have sort of a version of the New York Health Act already for Shinnecock. The New York State is obligated to provide health care for tribal nations, which sounds great, but it really does fall far from, what things should be like. But we have a dental clinic, but it's always closed. And so that doesn't really help anybody. But we do have like really good prescription health coverage through the state. But again, there's a lot of shortcomings that the New York Health Act could definitely help a lot of people out. Again, we're disproportionately affected by cancer, by respiratory illnesses. And, when you don't have the resources to take care of your health or pay for doctors, it can get really expensive. So I think the New York Health Act would be a huge benefit. Vision as well. We have a lot of people with vision. I know the New York Health Act is really comprehensive. It covers dental, vision, as well as health insurance and prescription coverage. And one thing that New York State does not provide for us is coverage in the event that you are hospitalized. And so I recently was hospitalized for 26 days. So I know firsthand financially how that can really just be life-changing and affect you. And with the New York Health Act, that wouldn't bankrupt people to get sick unexpectedly. So it's a really good thing. And I think there's definitely a lot of support. It would definitely help a lot of people at Shinnecock. And we're definitely in full support of the New York Health Act.
All right. I thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate the insight you've given us into what life within the Shinnecock Nation is. And I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend.